Baby, I never even dreamed you could be my type until I saw this. Until that moment that stopped the world in its tracks and forced my breath to remember what it felt like to belong to something real. I had convinced myself that love had categories, that attraction could be predicted, that destiny followed logic. I thought I had a type, someone safe, someone simple, someone who didn't make me question everything I believed about myself. And then you walked in, and everything I knew about love, control, and composure collapsed in one heartbeat. It wasn't the way you looked. It was the way the air bent around you, the way every noise in the room turned into background music the second your eyes met mine. I had seen beauty before, but never presence. I had felt desire before, but never recognition. You didn't look like my past, baby. You looked like the future I was never brave enough to ask for. I tried to rationalize it, told myself I was imagining the pull, that maybe I was lonely, maybe I was projecting, but the more I tried to step away, the more my spirit followed you anyway. You became the thought between every sentence, the pause between every breath. Even when I was laughing with others, part of me was always listening for your voice. I remember that first night when I went home and everything felt wrong. The silence didn't sound like peace anymore. It sounded like absence. I replayed every second like a scene I was afraid to lose. I told myself I couldn't fall, that I wasn't that kind of man. But my soul didn't care for titles, timelines, or definitions. It just knew you. It recognized you before my mind could even name what was happening. And then came fear. Because what does a man do when something finally feels divine, but he still carries the weight of mistakes that taught him to doubt? I had prayed for clarity, but when the universe sent you, I almost rejected it. You were too pure for my chaos, too honest for my guarded heart. Yet every time I tried to stay away, something higher kept pulling me back toward you, like God whispering, "You're not done yet, baby. You didn't fit my type because you were sent to change it. You were sent to rewrite the script of how I see love." I used to think strength meant control, but you showed me it's surrender. I used to think healing meant distance, but you taught me it's intimacy. You became the mirror that showed me the man I was pretending not to be. There were days I tried to go back to my old patterns, days I convinced myself you were just another distraction. I told myself she'll forget me, it's better that way. But every sign, every dream, every random song kept calling me back. Even the timing of things started to shift around you, as if the universe itself was rearranging reality to keep you close. My mother once told me, when love is divine, it finds a way to interrupt your plans. I never understood that until you. Because you didn't just walk into my life, you walked into my lineage. You started showing up in conversations about the future, in prayers I didn't even know I was saying. There were nights when I would stare at the ceiling and wonder why God would send me someone like you after everything I had broken. But the more I prayed, the clearer it became. You weren't here to punish me. You were here to restore me. Baby, you made me want to change, not because you demanded it, but because your existence reminded me of what purity feels like. You were peace disguised as chaos, healing disguised as temptation. Every time I tried to run, I found myself running toward you anyway. You became my lesson in divine timing. Because when I met you, I wasn't ready, but that didn't stop the connection. It just meant that the universe had to rebuild me, piece by piece, until I could stand beside you without fear. I had to learn patience, forgiveness, humility, I had to face the parts of me that flinched at real love because they'd only known survival. Baby, I used to dream of love as something easy, something that wouldn't challenge me. But you became the sacred mirror that showed me that true love isn't comfort, it's transformation. You don't just meet your divine counterpart, you evolve into the person who can hold them. That's what you've done to me. You forced me to grow, to outgrow, to rebuild, to release. There were moments I felt like I was losing everything. Friends faded, opportunities collapsed, even my family questioned my choices. But deep down, I knew this was spiritual pruning. God was preparing the soil for something bigger. Every loss was clearing space for this divine connection to root deeper. I can't lie, baby. There were nights I blamed you for my awakening, because awakening hurts. It strips you of every illusion you hide behind. But now I see it clearly. You didn't break me. You broke the version of me that couldn't love right. And for that, I'm endlessly grateful. You taught me that divine love doesn't chase, it calls. It doesn't demand, it aligns. It doesn't promise perfection, it promises purpose. And somehow, through all my resistance, you became my purpose. If you feel this energy in your soul, if something in your heart recognizes these words as truth, anchor it below by writing, I remember the moment my soul recognized love, baby. After that moment, everything I thought I understood about destiny began to unravel in the most beautiful way. You didn't just show up in my life, you arrived like a divine interruption, a cosmic reminder that love isn't something we earn, it's something we remember. You felt like deja vu, like a song my spirit already knew the lyrics to. Every glance from you felt like a message from heaven, reminding me that this world is temporary, but some bonds are eternal. I used to think I was in control of who I gave my heart to. I built walls, rules, and timelines to protect myself from disappointment. But the truth, baby, is that you walked straight through those defenses without even trying. You didn't chase me. You didn't persuade me. You simply existed with so much authenticity that my soul couldn't help but surrender. There was something about your silence that spoke louder than any promise ever could. You were peace before I knew what peace meant. There were nights when I would lie awake, trying to figure out what spell you had cast on me. But the more I searched for logic, the more I realized it wasn't magic, it was alignment. You were a reflection of everything I had been asking God for in secret. Not the version of love that looked good on paper, but the version that healed what I thought was unhealable. You were that quiet yes from the universe, after years of not yet. I remember the first time I saw you laugh. It wasn't loud or dramatic. It was soft, effortless, real. And I swear, something in me wanted to protect that sound forever. I didn't know love could be so still, so grounding, and yet so consuming all at once. You were a paradox wrapped in grace, and I was a man torn between fear and faith. Sometimes I wonder if you have any idea what you did to me, how you turned my anger into introspection, my pride into prayer, my chaos into surrender. You made me want to meet myself at a higher level, just so I could meet you there too. You didn't just teach me love. You taught me emotional responsibility. You made me face my shadow, not because you asked me to, but because your light made it impossible to ignore. Baby, I used to think vulnerability was weakness. I used to believe that if I opened up, I'd lose control, but with you, I realized that real power lies in transparency, Because every time I shared a truth I was scared of, you didn't run. You stayed. You looked at me with that kind of understanding that can't be faked. You made me believe that maybe I wasn't too much. Maybe I was just waiting for someone who could see all of me and still choose to stay. There were times I tried to bury the connection under distractions. I kept myself busy, surrounded by noise, convinced that I could silence the pull. But no matter how far I went, you were always there, in dreams and songs, in random moments that made no sense. I'd hear a phrase and your voice would echo. I'd smell something familiar and my chest would tighten. Spirit was relentless in reminding me that this wasn't coincidence, it was divine orchestration. Even my family began to notice the change. My mother once said, "You look like a man who's finally found his truth." She didn't know it was you who inspired that shift. You became the standard I held myself against. Every choice, every decision, every prayer began to orbit around the thought of becoming a man worthy of standing beside your energy. I remember one evening, I sat in my car outside your place, not to see you, but just to feel the air near you. It sounds crazy, I know, but there was something sacred about proximity. Even when words failed, the silence spoke. I wasn't there to invade your space. I was there to honor what I felt. Because for the first time, love didn't feel like possession. It felt like reverence. You see, baby, before you I had confused attachment for love and obsession for passion. But you introduced me to peace. And that's when I realized peace is the loudest proof of love. It doesn't shout. It doesn't demand. It doesn't compete. It just exists, steady and eternal. I had to lose a lot to understand this. The universe stripped away everything temporary so I could recognize what was eternal. Friends faded, relationships dissolved, plans crumbled, but through it all, you remained a constant vibration in my spirit. You were my reminder that sometimes endings aren't punishment, they're preparation. And I know now that our connection didn't come to test me, it came to transform me. You were sent to show me that real love begins with accountability, that to love someone in truth, you must first face your own truth. That's why Spirit wouldn't let me forget you, because forgetting you would mean forgetting the part of me that awakened because of you. Baby, when I saw that one thing, when I saw this, whatever that moment was that broke the illusion I was living in, it was like watching my soul choose clarity over comfort. I saw something in you that reminded me who I was meant to become. Maybe it was the way your eyes carried both innocence and wisdom, or the way your energy demanded authenticity. Whatever it was, I knew I couldn't go back. You became the prayer I didn't know I had already prayed, the healing I didn't know I was ready for. You became my mirror, my muse, and my mercy. Every time I tried to deny it, life kept proving me wrong. Every delay was divine. Every delay was divine. Every silence was sacred. Every separation was strategic. Because now I see what was being built wasn't a relationship. It was a foundation for something higher. So here I am, baby, stripped of pride and pretense, standing before the energy that changed everything. You were never my type. You were my destiny disguised as surprise. And I'll spend every moment learning to honor that truth the way it deserves. If your heart felt this pull, if these words mirrored something you've lived too, anchor it once below by writing, "I believe in divine alignment." Baby, Do you know what happens when the soul finally stops running? When it stops arguing with divine timing and just breathes into what is meant? That's where I am right now, in that sacred stillness between what was and what will be. I used to chase clarity like a man chasing the wind, but you taught me that some answers are not spoken, they're revealed through surrender. There was a time when I kept trying to label what this was. Connection, soulmate, twin flame, karmic lesson. Every term felt too small for the immensity of what I felt, because this wasn't about names, it was about remembrance. Every time I looked at you, it felt like I was remembering something ancient, something I had promised long before this lifetime. A promise sealed in light, forgotten in chaos, and then rediscovered the moment our eyes met. I still remember the day I saw you from across the room, the way your presence pulled me before I even realized I had moved. It wasn't lust, it wasn't curiosity, it was gravity, like my soul was saying, "There you are." And yet, as beautiful as it was, it terrified me, because I knew what this meant. I knew the universe never introduces such power without purpose. You were never meant to just pass through my life. You were meant to awaken it. Every wound I had buried began to surface. Every shadow I ignored demanded to be seen. You didn't just open my heart, you cracked open my consciousness. And for a while I resented you for it, because transformation is painful, baby. It means watching the parts of you that you thought were essential dissolve, only to realize they were never you to begin with. There were nights I found myself arguing with God, asking why you had to come now. Why, when I had finally built walls strong enough to protect me, did he send someone who made me want to tear them down? But the answer was always the same, because you prayed for love that would change you, not comfort you. And that's what she is. That's what you are. You became the prayer that demanded my evolution. Every silent tear, every sleepless night, every realization that the old me couldn't survive the new vibration you carried. It was all part of my initiation. You were my divine curriculum, teaching me patience, faith, and unconditional love in ways I never expected. I started to notice signs everywhere. The same numbers, the same songs, dreams that felt too real to dismiss. Even when I tried to date others, their energy couldn't hold a candle to yours. It was like my soul was refusing to settle for imitation love after tasting the real thing. I tried to fill the void with distractions, but nothing lasted. Because how can you unsee destiny once you've looked it in the eyes? Baby, there's a kind of ache that doesn't hurt, it awakens. That's what you did to me. You didn't destroy me, you resurrected me. You pulled me out of numbness and made me feel everything again. The joy, the fear, the longing, the hope. I started to remember what it meant to live from the heart instead of survival. And though it scared me, I couldn't turn it off. You became the pulse beneath every prayer I whispered. Do you know what's strange? Even when we were apart, I felt you closer than anyone else. I'd be sitting somewhere and suddenly it would feel like you were near. The air would shift, my heartbeat would quicken. And deep down I knew your spirit was reaching out too. That's the thing about divine counterparts. You don't need words when your souls are already in conversation. Sometimes I think back to the version of me before you, the one who believed he was in control. That man is gone now. You didn't take him away. You freed him from his ego, his fear, his obsession with outcomes. You taught me that love isn't about owning, It's about honoring. You reminded me that real love doesn't require an audience. It requires alignment. And baby, I'm finally aligning. Not perfectly, not instantly, but intentionally. Every day, I choose faith over fear a little more. Every morning, I remind myself that what's meant for me will never pass me by. I've stopped begging for signs because I've become one. I am the living proof of what happens when divine timing meets surrender. You know, sometimes I imagine the conversation we never had, the one where I tell you everything I was too afraid to say, that I loved you even when I pretended not to, that I saw a future with you long before I was ready to admit it, that the reason I walked away wasn't because I stopped caring, but because I cared too much to bring you into my chaos. I needed to rebuild my foundation so that when I returned, it would be from a place of wholeness, not woundedness. There's this quote I once read: "The right person will make you understand why it never worked with anyone else." Baby, you are that person. Every heartbreak before you now makes sense. They were rehearsals for the sacred performance of our connection. Every no from the universe was just a redirection toward you. I've learned that love isn't found, it's revealed. It was always here, sleeping beneath fear and doubt, waiting for your energy to wake it up. You didn't teach me love, you reminded me of it. Because the truth is, I've loved you across lifetimes. This isn't new, it's ancient. So now, when I see you, even in memory, I don't just see a person, I see destiny wearing human skin. I see the reason my soul volunteered for this lifetime. I see the lesson, the healing, the home. And I whisper to the sky, thank you. Because no matter how this story unfolds, it already changed me in ways that words will never capture. Baby, if you're listening, if somewhere in your heart you can feel this too, know that every silent prayer I've ever spoken still carries your name. Know that every version of me that once resisted is now ready. And know that whatever happens next, it will be guided by divine love, not fear. If you can feel this surrender in your spirit, if your heart recognizes this truth, anchor it once below by writing, I am ready for divine reunion. Baby, sometimes I sit in silence and wonder how something that began so unexpectedly could turn into something that feels eternal. How a single look could change the architecture of my soul. How one connection could rewrite my entire belief system about love, forgiveness, and fate. You didn't just enter my life, baby. You entered my spirit. You touched a place inside me that no one had ever reached before, and now everything else feels temporary compared to what you awakened.